So you've all been asking for it, so here it is. Arima versus Furuta. I have seen this comment plastered absolutely everywhere. A lot of you guys really want this fight to happen. You know what, today we're going to go through the process and try and make it a potentially legitimate thing with a somewhat realistic outcome. Do note that it's very difficult to appease to everyone's inner needs when it comes to these hypothetical fights or even hypothetical power scalings. A lot of people just kind of slap shit together and be like, oh, this person wins or this person wins because they're really strong. But I'm going to go through the effort of kind of breaking everything down a little bit more in detail for everyone and potentially try and get you guys to understand my thought process and the decision making for the result. To get this started, we are going to have to look at some of the negatives for these characters, some of the biggest problems that arise when you try and pit both of these very unique characters amongst each other. So we're going to start off with Arima. To be completely honest, he's a very interesting character. He's written a very specific way. You either really love his character or really hate how he's written. And to be completely honest, he's never evidently played upon to the poorest extent of how he's written. And what I mean by that is that he is written as a character that's not meant to be beaten. He's never meant to be defeated, unless it's obviously by himself or his own will. He should have used him pretty accurately. He was very smart about how he used Arima and moved him around the field in terms of scaling other people's power, which is something that was pretty important to the story. We knew straight off the bat that Arima was the top dog and basically no one could defeat him. That's the first biggest problem, is that when you try and think about Arima as a character and him potentially going up against other characters in the story, your first thought to it is going to be like, well, Arima wins. Because he's the most powerful character, he's never lost before, he's automatically going to win. That's a big problem we're going to try and push through today, wrapping in more of the story element and more of the realistic element. Another thing is that he is extremely unpredictable. Arima fights a lot of different ways. He either goes from 0 to 100 extremely quickly, or he goes the technical route, or he goes really slow and long-winded. It kind of depends. He adapts his fighting style to his enemies, and he does a very, very good job at doing it. So to kind of put him at a certain point is probably very inaccurate, considering he probably could be a lot more powerful than we could even imagine that was even ever shown to us potentially, but that's also an issue that he is extremely mysterious. Last but not least is his aging process, something that we are going to have to look at and try and wrap into the story accurately to some extent, considering Ishida never really played upon it throughout the story. He's always kind of been on top of the throne in terms of power scaling and an individual that can hold their own. So we're gonna have to do the dirty work there and try and make it more realistic, especially because this final fight between Arima and Furuta, I'm putting it at the end of the story. Think of Carnegie versus Furuta's final battle. This time it's Arima versus Furuta. So there's a bit of time difference there. Now moving on to Furuta's problems, kind of in the same realm of things. One, he is extremely mysterious. We don't really know the full potentials of what Furuta was actually capable of. Two, his full Kagura, very new to us. We've seen it once and one time only. Could his full Kagura go on even further? Potentially. Could he get a lot more powerful? Potentially. There's a lot of different things when it comes to a full Kagura and what Furuta was definitely showcasing at the end of the story. Last but not least, Furuta is unpredictable in fighting styles. He is extremely intelligent. A lot of the times he leaves his fights, he runs away because he knows he's not going to win. A lot of people call that cowardness, but he is extremely intelligent and picks his battles very meticulously. Him going up against Arima probably wouldn't be a thing that would happen unless he knew he could win. That's also an issue. So with that out of the way, where do we start? Carnegie versus Arima. Imagine if this fight came to a conclusion with Arima still being alive. He didn't evidently kill himself. Carnegie still became the one-eyed king. He took the title from him, and Arima stepped back, into the shadows. We're gonna have to play on the relevancy of his aging process. In that fight between Carnegie versus Arima, it was heavily implied that Arima was aging at an extremely rapid pace. He had a lot of disadvantages going into that fight already. One of his eyes was supposedly completely blind. His organs would most likely be very close to failing, and he was basically reaching his limitation of how long he could be alive thanks to his rapid aging process. It basically deteriorates the body extremely quickly and makes the body crazily prone to diseases and organ failure and stuff like that. Taking that into consideration, the time jump between then and the ending of the story is a decent amount. So already wrapping in the aging process, Arima is at a massive disadvantage if he even survives to the end of the story, which in my mind, I don't think he would have, right? But let's say he did. Let's say he survived somehow, he prolonged his aging process and went toe-to-toe with Furuta at the end of the story. There's two ways you can kind of wrap this in with one another. First and foremost, if you do look at the aging process as a stunted thing, but it was slowly trickling over, so he was continuously aging, but just at a slower rate, by the time we get to the Furuta fight, he would be extremely weak. And evidently, in my mind, this fight would kill him either way, whether he wins or loses. The other way you can do it, which is the more simplified version, is that his aging process is gone or it's stunted completely, and he goes into the Furuta fight, kind of like he did in the Carnegie fight, and just completely obliterates him. There's realistically nothing holding Arima back. He has no disadvantages other than his aging process. So if it's out of the picture, him versus Furuta, I'm sorry, but the answer is Arima's gonna win 10 out of 10 times, even as unpredictable Furuta is. But let's look at the aging process. Let's wrap this into the picture. Where does that leave a fight between Arima and Furuta? First and foremost, it kind of depends on how quick the first person is to strike. I well and truly believe that Furuta picking this fight, going up against Arima, he would know a lot of his fighting styles in terms of whether if he were attacked extremely quickly or over an extremely long period. Funny enough, I think Furuta would also realize with the aging process of Arima that he wouldn't necessarily have long to live. That could easily work in Furuta's advantage in playing the long battle game, kind of wearing Arima down, dodging all of his attacks as best as he could. As fast as a lot of people think Arima is, in this state of mind, in this aging process, and everything that's kind of going on at the moment, he's extremely weakened and a lot slower, right? So it's just going to get continuously worse and worse the longer the battle goes on. And if Furuta sees this before it even starts, before the fight begins, that puts him at a massive advantage. One that I think would push him to his victory. If he can elongate this fight while throwing back attacks, while potentially going into a full Kaguya, even to the extent that we seen it, I highly believe that Furuta would come out on top. Not necessarily unscathed, he may lose a limb or two, but in a full Kaguya state, extremely powerful regardless of who it is, something extremely quick and prolific, evidently I think would be enough to overthrow what I would call a winded Arima. So in that instance, for me, Furuta wins, and he comes out on top. However, there is another situation. Arima is a very intelligent character, just as intelligent as Furuta, if not more. I think he would know that him running around the battlefield, or if he's being led around the battlefield to lose strength, that he would notice extremely quickly. I honestly think Arima would think about this beforehand, as that would kind of be his most obvious weakness. So how do you kind of get rid of that completely? Like I said before, Arima has this unique thing that he can do where he goes from 0 to 100 extremely quickly. In my mind, I well and truly believe that if Arima were to attack with everything he had straight off the get-go, as fast as he could, as powerful as he could, and managed to hit Furuta at least once, maybe even twice, in the amount of, let's say, 5 hits in total, in case he missed him, I think Arima would kill him on the spot. I think Arima would completely obliterate Furuta, even potentially in a full Kaguya state. I say potentially just because of how fast Arima would have to approach Furuta. Probably wouldn't leave him much time to go into a full Kaguya to begin with, so most likely fall into Furuta being obliterated before he could even do anything, before he could go into a full Kaguya state. If he was in one, it changes a little bit. It may lengthen out, but I still evidently think it could be possible if Arima really wanted this person dead. He'd play it extremely smart. Unfortunately, however, it's not a flawless victory. As much as I do think Arima could kill Furuta in 1 or 2 hits at the start of the fight, the first attack that hits, I also think it would kill Arima because we're taking in the aging process and his organs are on the brink. They're right on the edge of failing, destroying themselves, and you can imagine how destructive it would be to push yourself to such a limit to outstrength and outspeed your opponent, especially of the caliber of Furuta. Yes, Arima may win, but ultimately I think he would also die. And truth be told, there's realistically no other revelations I can see surrounding that fight. That's basically it. I know a lot of people may not have expected that result, or it seems a little bit too open-ended, but for the most part, that's basically all there is. These characters are extremely difficult to put against one another. You're either going to have Furuta win in a long-winded battle, potentially, or you're going to have Arima kill Furuta straight off the get-go, but ultimately kill himself. Even if Furuta doesn't even attack Arima in a long-winded battle, Arima would most likely keel over himself, just trying to attack or even defend potentially, I don't know. For the most part, the only person that realistically comes out on top is Furuta, considering Arima never realistically wins. He would die in 9 out of the 10 situations. I don't see him living past anything. But then, like I said, if you take out the aging process, Arima wins 10 out of 10 times. I don't think Furuta would be able to stand a chance. So that's basically it. Let me know who you think would win between Arima and Furuta. You know, you're going to give it to the top tier character himself, Arima, or you're going to give it to the very mysterious underdog, Furuta. I know it's a very interesting and complex fight to even try and imagine, especially with Arima, but you never actually know. I'm interested to see what people think and how they take this video. So with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.